You're listening to the DownShift podcast, taking you trackside for all things motorsport. We're four mates from Melbourne breaking down the races, the drama, and everything in between, all with a little banter and a lot of passion. If you love motorsport and cars as much as we do, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you're always on the grid with us. So it's lights out, drop the clutch, and let's get racing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the DownShift podcast. As three mates from Australia give their expert analysis of Formula One.
Who's the other
and
one?
The fourth one tries to keep up. Hey, welcome to our Bahrain Preview episode. Located in Sakhir, debuted in 2004 in the era of Schumacher and Barrichello. Recently saw a fierce battle, in 24 saw a fierce battle between Webber and Alonso, one of which is still racing currently. Lap record held by Pedro de la Rosa in 2005. 2004 season, Max won by over 22 seconds over Checo and dominated by Red Bull and Ferrari. I'm going to throw to UKT now for some more input on that track.
Yeah, look, this is the first race that we'll see under lights. Obviously, being in Bahrain, they're doing this to allow for this to be in the timing for European viewers. So this will be the first one for us, having to get up at about 1 a.m. to watch the race.
That's very early.
It is. So I'll be in my McLaren onesie and
I don't think the audience wants to see that, just to clarify that.
It's the small wins. It's a really interesting track because we've got 3 DRS zones here and we've also got some temperature changes and wind. So from that regards, for setups for the teams, they need to be thinking about what temperature they're running practice and qualifying in, and then also what temperatures are going to be for the race, which are in the evening. So we're starting to see the drop off from the 30s into the high 20s, which can have an impact on tyres and also the heating, and also considering that the FIA have now introduced the new heat rules, where if it is over 31 degrees, they have to announce that we've got a heat hazard. And so that makes 2 changes to the vehicle, with the drivers having to wear a fireproof shirt, which has piped cooling through it. Plus, also, they do need to introduce the air flap into the nose cone of the car to allow for air cooling to go through it. What that means is it actually adds 2 kilos to the car for practice and roughly about 5 kilos for the Grand Prix as well. So, yeah, so we should see some interesting changes here, which obviously the teams are going to have to deal with and think about a little bit differently for the race. Again, it's... Sorry?
I'm sorry, I was just going to jump in and say, but the weight's going to help Ferrari this time around.
You stole my line.
Sorry.
No more underweight penalty.
Question for you then. Based on the fact you just said, Christian, it's going to be quite a windy track, are we going to see the same sort of tailwinds that they were causing problems last weekend, where the drivers were saying that coming into those high-speed corners, the tailwind was actually pushing the car and causing some difficulties for some drivers?
Quite possibly. So, and depending on whether or not there's movement in the wind as well. So we saw that from that last race is at one point it was a headwind, at another point it was a tailwind. So for the drivers to be able to read that, or at least feel that in the car, it can have a massive impact in regards to the drivability and handling of the vehicle.
I think if it is windy, it could be very tough for some teams who have a nervous car that's not too stable. So yeah, could bring a few people undone if the wind is up.
And even for teams which may have some nervous drivers as well. So we've got some rookies coming onto the tracks here. So it could see where if they haven't had the experience of some high winds, that impacting them as well. So yeah, big change. So the good thing is we've also got some interesting watching around some of the turns. The great thing about this is we've got 3 DRS zones. So some really good opportunities for overtaking, but also we've got turn 10, which is a nice tight downhill off camber corner. So some great overtaking or some tussles into turn 10 or out of turn 10 into the DRS zone. And then also that fast sweeping corner, which we saw a lot of the cars through practice, getting some pace through there as well. So it's always an enjoyable part of the track to watch.
Yeah, hopefully we get some more overtakes than Suzuka. That was, as we mentioned in the last episode, there was a bit of a processional sort of race, that one. And historically, we had a look at the data before this round, and Bahrain has about 50% more overtakes than Suzuka historically. And also given that it's probably going to be a 2-stop race again this year like it was last year predominantly, that might throw in a bit more of a strategy option for some teams to try and jump others in the pits. And we would expect at Bahrain, we'd probably get an undercut opportunity. So someone coming out or pitting early, coming out on fresher tyres might be able to jump a car ahead of them, where, as we saw in Suzuka, there was no undercut at all because it took a little while for the best racing tyre, the hards, to warm up. So the outlap didn't really give you too much of an advantage.
Kind of guessing too, we're not really expecting rain given where we are either.
Who's to say? Because we saw in testing that we actually had some rain in Bahrain. And so from that regards, there was only 3 teams who brought intermediates to the track for testing. Obviously, they knew something that the other teams didn't.
You mentioned testing as sort of what we could expect to happen. So are we expecting there to be a bus on circuit perhaps and maybe some windows smashing, or maybe the lights might go out even?
It's the Toyota prototype, mate. It's coming through for next season.
The Gazoo Racing bus.
That's the one. Yep.
Nice.
That's the camouflage, is the bus on top of it. The rest of it, the chassis is correct underneath it. It's all good.
You never know.
But Happy, talking to your point on the number of stops, and as you're saying, it's traditionally a 2-stop race, but we've also seen where teams so far this season have opted for a 1-stop strategy where there was talk of 2 stops, and that's obviously disadvantaged a number of teams who have decided to try that performance. We've also seen, and jumping into the tyre performance, is that the tyres that we've had, the new compounds that Pirelli have put forward, we're seeing really great performance out of the hards. So as the teams are going through this, we're seeing long stints for the hards going, to 30 plus laps for that compound. So it may be that we see some teams who will still continue to consider a 1-stop strategy for this, as you're saying, depending on the wind, depending on the sand that's blown across the track, given that it's also heavy braking as well. But I think this will be a real test for the tyres. And my question is as to whether or not teams are even going to consider the softs. Any team that's done soft so far, it hasn't worked for them.
Yeah, well, the advantage the teams have is that they've already done testing here with these tyres and the current car, although they've obviously improved their cars a little bit over the first 3 rounds. Last year we saw Max win the race. He ran 2 sets of softs and a set of hards, so really depends on the degradation of the softs as to whether or not they'd be a good race tyre. So we'll see when they roll out, but the teams have got a lot of data on it. All we can hope is that it's a bit more exciting than Suzuka. You mentioned the wind and sand and so on. During the race, that probably won't be an issue, but the other thing to consider is it's a track that cools down quickly in the evening. So we know the days, I think, are forecast to be pretty warm. I think you looked at the weather just before we got on the broadcast here.
Yeah, so looking in the weather, for Friday, we're seeing a high of 32 and a low of 24. And don't forget, we got FP1, which is at 2:30 p.m. and FP2, which is at 6 p.m. So that will be a test of when they are starting the race. Saturday will be a high of 34 and a low of 23. Again, FP3 is 3:30 and qualifying is at 5 p.m. So an hour before the race would start on Sunday. But then on Sunday, it's actually predicted to be a hot day. So 37 degrees during the day with a low of 26. The race starts at 6 p.m., which is at sunset. So that will start to see the track temperature degrade quite quickly into the evening.
Yeah, so I think because the FP1 and FP3 are sort of peak temperature in the afternoon, qualifying is going to be a bit cooler. So I think we'll definitely see teams doing some soft running at the end of FP2 when it's a bit cooler, because that'll be similar conditions to qualifying the next day. And this is a track that it doesn't have a lot of support categories racing on it, apart from the Formula Ones. It's not a really busy track like Melbourne is. And because of the wind and the sand around the circuit, what happens is the cars will come out for a session and the grip will improve usually fairly dramatically across the session. So this is one of those rounds where you want to be the latest car that you can be on track and nail that lap at the end, because the track will just get faster and faster. So qualifying at Sakhir is always good to watch, because the track is it can jumble the order up. If someone makes a mistake, they could get jumped by 5 or 6 cars. So yeah, really looking forward to qualifying. It's a tough qualifying to do, but a great race to watch under lights too. It looks really good.
I mean, if you take the data we've had from the first 3 races, if they're looking at the tyres, my understanding was the hards and the medium compounds, there was almost minimal to no time difference for the long run and the laps as well. Is that correct, or am I reading that wrong?
They were degrading, but there was no cliff that they sort of fell off. So it doesn't look like anyone's really hit that tyre cliff yet this year. I don't know. Maybe we'll see it in Sakia. We'll see what happens. I haven't looked at the tyre allocations the teams have chosen, but I have looked last year at the tyres that the teams ran, and quite a few ran softs during the race.
I mean, you're right. We're only this is only the 3 races in, but is that due to where the teams are in terms of regulations and all being very similar, or is it changes in tyre compounds from last year to this year that
these are new tyre. Yeah, these are new tyre compounds. So Pirelli has introduced a new tyre compound for 2025. They do this as they come into. They've got new tyre compounds going into 2026. So you're seeing some of the drivers are already doing some test drives with the compounds for 2026. So as they change it each time, it mixes things up for the teams. What's interesting, to Lockie's point, is that we've seen that with this compound, which has just been introduced for this year, we really haven't seen much of a drop-off. So the tyres have been consistently pretty good. And so that's why we've seen a one-stop strategy, because you can do a pretty good run and the times have been pretty good on the hards, and then go to your mediums and they'll take you to the end of the race. So with this being a triple header, we're seeing a very quick turnaround from Japan. Dan, as you sort of look at that with the pressure on the teams to pack up, jump on planes and get over to the Middle East?
Yeah, well, hopefully there's no delays at the airlines as there was leaving Melbourne. I think Alpine have probably got the head start. They've just got to take their bin full of parts with them and get over to Bahrain and either put them in recycling or see what they can salvage out of that. But yeah, no, it's interesting. I guess it's a lot of pressure on the teams to turn it around in, like I said, the triple header, a week every week for 3 weeks to sort of, pack up and get going. But I mean, they're used to it. They must know what they're doing. So I'll just crack on. I mean, I do wonder a little bit how they go with the climate change. Again, probably used to it, but yeah.
How much of a differing setup is it going to be on the car from Suzuka to this week? And I mean, obviously the aero packages are going to be relatively similar. I mean, it's not like they're going to have, massive replacement wings and front dams and things like that are changing over. So would it be more tweaks, or is it going to be full nose cones, full spoilers, the whole lot?
No, I think they'd be running sort of a medium-ish downforce setup, because Suzuka is more of a high downforce sort of track because it's mostly corners. But Sakia's it's a good track for testing. It's why they test there, is because there's a good mixture of corners. There's high speed, there's hairpins, there's heavy braking zones, there's longer straights where you can stretch the legs of the cars. So it needs to be a good all-round setup that looks after tyres on that surface and potentially in a fair bit of heat. So, yeah, I don't think the setups necessarily would change. Like, the teams are always chasing a car with nice balance, but because of these heavy braking zones, which is where you get overtakes done, they would definitely want the car to be stable under brakes in a straight line. Like, you want to maximize braking performance here. So cooling is an issue. The teams will be running slightly larger intakes on the brakes. There might be a larger exit around the rear of the car from the engine just to cool the car a bit more. But apart from that, they'll just be trying to maintain or find a good neutral balance around the track.
Yeah, given that this is a clockwise track, one of the things to look at is the rear left of the vehicle. So you're getting some really strong braking, but also turning. A lot of that distribution goes to the rear left. So you'll see a lot of the initial graining or the impact on tyre wear happening in that rear left. So with that, there's obviously a number of challenges as we look in regards to the race. So Happy, I know you were talking about track limits a little bit earlier. So obviously something for the drivers to consider.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably one of the tracks early in the year that the drivers are able to push the limits on some of the exits of corners. So the FIA sets track limits on various corners. If you go over those limits or your tyres go outside the track limit, your lap time can get deleted. So we may see more of that during qualifying when drivers are really pushing to get that ultimate lap time. So that could throw a spanner in the works for some people. And then there are, obviously we've got 3 DRS zones as well. There's a bit to manage there as far as battery deployment, trying to get overtakes done. And we mentioned the heat and cooling as well. But they're the other main challenges for the weekend, keeping the brakes cool so we don't get brake overheating, and keeping the drivers cool as well if the temperature is high enough during the race.
But we don't think that temperature's actually going to stay at that level for the race, though, because if they're going to start it at 6, it'll rapidly come down.
It should. Yeah, I don't know what the ruling is. It might be at race start they have to have a cool suit, or I don't know. I guess they just look at the forecast and make a judgment call.
Yeah, it's where it's going to be 31 degrees or higher.
Have they figured out the cool suits yet? Because it sounded like when they did have them early in testing that there was a lot of drivers that were very unhappy with the way they the comfort level and the effectiveness of them.
I don't know. Like we heard, they don't cool you down a lot. It's they help a bit because they're a fairly lightweight, basic sort of system. So certainly not as effective as some of the systems that touring car drivers can have with a big bin of dry ice and fans and cool air that'll run through your suit for most of a race. The F1 system doesn't sound like it's much like that.
Put the recirc button on the air conditioner.
Yeah, that's it. You just turn the fan up.
Yeah.
Well, they've already got the windows down, so that, they've got some sort of breeze coming through.
Yeah, a challenging.
Why didn't anyone think of that? I mean, seriously.
Challenging race.
It's interesting because if you look at the F1 website as well, there's not a lot of information in regards to the cooling systems. From that perspective, is talking about pumps and plumbing and a thermal store to hold some sort of ice block or something along those lines, but predominantly, to Huppy's point, it is air cooling, which is running through a nose cone with, I think it was 44 meters of tubing going through a race shirt.
Let's just put it this way: we think it's still in its infancy stage, and they might develop it better.
Oh, look, it'll be ongoing, and drivers will provide feedback as well. I'm sure they'd be hoping by the time they get to Singapore, which tends to be the hardest race physically to do, that there's some sort of cooling available.
George is hanging out for that to be sorted out by Singapore.
Yeah. Well, look, it's a great weight loss program for them anyway, so it's a good way to lose 3 or 4 kilos in an hour.
4 kilos in 2 hours is just incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to chuckle when I can't remember which Sky commentator it was saying that this race is one of the most challenging. I'm going, have you watched Singapore?
I think Suzuka's pretty tough
your
physically.
Commentator from the weekend.
Was it Doohan who had trouble getting out of the car at Singapore? And I think there were a couple other drivers who, Suzuka, and a couple others that were struggling as well because of the G-forces around the whole track. You don't get much time to take a break. It's really the main straight, and that's about it.
Well, Doohan had trouble getting out of the car.
That was FP2. I reckon he had trouble getting out of the car there. Yep.
He didn't know what went.
There's nothing left. He was just that bit left.
We'll take 50-50 on that, K2.
Yep. No, all good. Look, again, it was the feedback from my son. I need to be funnier in our podcast.
No.
Be better. Do better.
Be better.
Great feedback. Yeah.
Well, you were funny in the previous podcast when you couldn't pronounce the track names, but no one saw that.
Wait till we share the bloopers. We cut all the funny stuff out. We can't have you be the funny one.
Oh, no, we'll have our blooper reel at some stage. And look, in regards to who's looking strong for the race, we've obviously seen McLaren start the year reasonably strong. We've seen Max, I'm not going to say Red Bull, Max also starting the season pretty strong.
Team Max.
Team Max.
You can't say Red Bull. No one else is driving for it. So
well, he is Red Bull at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So any other comments and thoughts before we jump into the predictions for this race?
Hopefully we can get some points this round based on the predictions from the last round. I wouldn't call us excellent pundits at this point in time based on the predictions we had last race. So.
We're learning.
Don't be building your fantasy league on our suggestions.
Well, if you can work out the fantasy league, I mean, that's as we've all sort of been struggling to understand how the hell we get our fantasy league together.
I've given up on it.
God, my Bet365 account didn't go through for the race, so it's all good.
I'm just going to do predictions, and that's it. I've given up on the fantasy stuff.
Sounds great. So, well, given that we're talking about predictions and you're just going to do that, Huppy, we'll throw to you first. Who do you see as being on pole for the race, and what are your predictions for first, second, and third?
I am going to write off Max's pole performance last round as just Max being a world champion, and he just pulled one out of the bag, showed his true value to the Red Bull team.
Generational talent, according to Christian Horner.
As some people say. Oh, look, it's hard to argue against that based on his performance. But I'm going to go back to my regular tipping, and that is going to go I'm going for the percentage play here. Very tough to call pole between Oscar and Lando at the moment. They're very, very evenly matched. I've got my Oscar shirt on, so I'm going to pick Oscar for pole.
So non-biased opinion.
I will therefore pick Oscar for the race win. Again, I'm going to go Lando for second. And just to keep it consistent with my predictions from last round, I'm going to pick Max for third.
So, boring.
Oh, yeah, but I'm actually trying to win this.
Playing the safe game.
Competitive, but boring. That's what it is.
I don't know what I'm doing, and I am winning currently.
I'm not winning currently.
Why don't we go to our points leader, Lockie? What are you thinking?
Take it away.
Damn, I opened my mouth too soon there.
Here we go.
All right. Nah, well, look, I'm sort of the same way of Hubby. I don't think Verstappen's going to pull it out again for this one. I do think the fact, he has been very, very strong there in the last few years. I will have the papaya there, but I think Norris is going to pit Piastri. Yeah, calm down.
You're an
calm
Australian.
down.
Come on.
Yeah, but
Australian
I'm not a very
bias.
good one. I think they'll be neck and neck, so I think they'll be in the top 3 for sure. Those ones. I'm going to put Piastri down to win the race, though. I think he'll pit Norris there. Norris will come second, but it's actually going to be Handsome George who comes
Handsome
in for
George.
the third place.
Oh, good.
Handsome George.
Yeah, we missed him this weekend.
You can take that straight to the bookies. Just put a $5 on that. You should be right.
Handsome George, we didn't mention this during the week, but he has been driving very well. So that's
He's doing
probably a
very
good
well.
prediction.
Consistent.
Yep.
He's been very consistent.
I'll give you
He's
that
doing
one.
some good points. Yeah.
And that he's in my fantasy league, so I need the points as
He's not
well.
lighting it on fire. He's just got a...
All right, so Schwags, what are your thoughts?
Who knows? I'm going to say
want me to come
Charles
back to
the
you?
pole. No, I know. I just know they're wrong.
Well, you've been consistent so far, so
maybe,
why break
maybe
the trend?
alternative. Let's not say wrong. No one can ever be wrong. Okay, so pole position is going to be Charles. He's just being pipped. He might get up. And I think, maybe there's a bit of luck in pole position too. But I reckon maybe Max has found his stride. Like, he can make the car do it and he can hold off others while he's doing it. So he's still a good driver. I don't want him to win, but I think he'll win. I think Oscar will come second and Charles will come third.
Right, yeah.
Okay,
I've got to do some bold predictions. I've got to make up some points somewhere.
How many points is Schwags on right now? So that's not going to change by the end of this weekend. Okay, just check.
All right. Well, I'm going to be boring as well to start off with. I think that with the tussle between Lando and Oscar, Oscar's going to... We're just going to be seeing this 1-1-1-1. So I'm putting Oscar for pole, with Oscar also taking out the Grand Prix, so he'll take first. Second, I'm putting in Max, but I'm going to go for a bit of a long shot here because just seeing this continual improvement.
Lance Stroll for third.
Yeah.
You're going to say Kimi, aren't you?
Alonso.
I am. I'm putting Kimi in for third. I reckon Kimi's going to just really show
no
what
points
he's
for
made
you
of.
for third. Okay.
But no, we'll wait and see. So, so Oscar, Max and Kimi.
I like it.
Well, they're
Bold
set in stone
choices.
now.
Oh, well,
Look, go hard or go home. So with that, we'll see what happens at Bahrain and see if going bold actually has some payoff.
Say it. Say Sakira.
Sakira, like you did in the warm-up.
Yeah, Sakira. Yeah.
It's Suzuka.
So looking forward to seeing a much more exciting race than we did last weekend. We will be back on Tuesday to review the race and give you our thoughts and review of all the action and the head-to-head between all the drivers. So until then, we'll see you on the next lap. That's the checkered flag for this episode of The Downshift. Thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us in the paddock. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss a lap. And hey, if we've earned it, drop us a 5-star review. It really helps us climb the grid and reach more motorsport fans. Until next time, keep it fast, keep it fun, and we'll catch you on the next lap.